evening, everybody. It is 6:04 p.m., and I'd like to welcome you all to the second Policy Committee meeting for May. We're here in the Nashua North Boardroom. This meeting is a continuation of our May agenda. We had a very, very challenging agenda this time, and we weren't able to get through everything. Roll call. I'm here. Starling is not here. Ms. Johnson is here.
Present.
Ms. Zeem is not here, but Ms. Bishop has joined us so that we have 3 people, which is better than 2 people. And tonight we have Ms. Carey in for Mr. Parker. All right. So, excuse me, everybody. So, I received a couple of emails, one yesterday afternoon and one today, asking if we could have public comments on some of the policies that are being proposed tonight. Does anyone have any objection to public comments?
No.
No? Okay. Then what I will do is I'll have the commenters come up to...
Yeah, we thought they could just sit.
Yeah, I'm just looking for where this thing is. Well, do you want to sit over there so I can see you?
You want us over here?
Yeah, here, let me give you a sign-in sheet.
I can just tell you where I live.
Yeah, but then I have to write it down, you have to wait. It's a brand new pen, it still has the thing on it.
I'm a teacher, I got my own pen.
All right, take that over there, so if anybody else wants to speak, they can write themselves down. So, my suggestion is that we have public comments first. Is that acceptable?
That's fine.
Okay. Objections? No? Great.
All right, everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Gary Hoffman, 38 Perham Street, Nashua, New Hampshire, Unit D. I am here tonight to speak against proposed policy BHC. Especially considering this year where members of the staff have come to this board meeting and spoken directly about working condition issues, and especially in light of having an unprecedented number of resignations. I am confused who would decide that it will be a good idea to propose a policy like this that significantly limits the ability of staff members, not just teachers, we're talking custodians, food service workers, principals, from speaking with the board. And in fact, even at the end of the policy, it threatens code of ethics violations if you are to break this. And that goes 2 ways. Now, I'm curious, I don't know how it's going to be enforced at the board's end. We certainly know with us, they can, go after our license, discipline, all sorts of things. The other piece of this that really bothers me is it seems that if any member of the staff has something they would like to bring to the board, it needs to go to the superintendent first. Someone whom we don't even know who that person's going to be July 1st. Sometimes superintendents are unethical. Look at the news. It happens. What happens if a superintendent doesn't bring an issue up? What if this issue actually is the superintendent? As a board, your job is to supervise the superintendent. If you're not getting input from the staff, then how are you supposed to do your job in that supervisory role? Furthermore, RSA 98E clearly gives public employees the right to freedom of speech to speak to their elected officials unless there's confidential or privileged information. This goes beyond that. I urge this to be voted down now. I'm a social studies teacher. The First Amendment is one of the things that I teach. I'm a big supporter of it. I think it's one of those things that, the First Amendment comes first for a reason. You don't have your other rights without the freedom of speech. please do not send this forward. If it goes before the full board, we didn't have much time to prepare. I guarantee you these seats will be filled. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Did anyone else wish to speak? Okay, absolutely.
Good evening. My name is, it's on. Can you hear me?
I think, yep.
Okay. My name is Sue Judici. I'm a retired teacher.
You gotta click it so the green light hits.
Well, there is a green light on.
Oh, maybe just put it closer to your mouth.
Now, can you hear me now?
Oh. It wasn't bright enough. Okay. I'm Sue Judici. I retired after teaching 34 years in this district 4 years ago, and I taught at Fairgrounds Middle School. Oh, I also live at 8 Mahogany Drive here in Nashua. And I've spoken many times before the board for various reasons. I personally was never afraid to text or call the superintendent, whoever it was, because there were a couple of them during my tenure. But a lot of teachers are. They don't go directly. And I will tell you, the reason they don't, and you can probably figure it out, is a trust issue. And they will not go to the superintendent. They're afraid of retaliation. And that is the biggest thing about this policy that I see also, is there is no trust. There's no trust between a lot of the teachers in the central office, and also no trust between teachers in the Board of Ed. So I think that you have to be very, very careful with this. It doesn't make any sense to me, and I think it would be really foolish to make that mistrust bump it up another level. It just is not. It's not a good. It's not a good policy, and I know you can't answer any questions, but I'd like to know who came up with this. I find it very interesting that all of a sudden this kind of a policy exists. I can only speak to a couple of things that I know that people are retaliatory, and I know that people have been non-renewed and that sort of thing because they've spoken up. And that's something maybe you ought to spend your time on and figure out, why did that happen? Perfectly good teachers didn't get renewed. I wonder why. Coinky-dink? No, I don't think so. So there is a real trust issue, and I think that's something you need to resolve. And by putting this forward, I think that that's not going to resolve it. It's only going to exacerbate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie? No?
I don't know, Heather.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot I want to say, but I'm afraid to say it.
Okay. Fair enough.
Afraid? All right. I have a good job. I know. There. I don't need to be that close. So, Ms. Judici mentioned trust.
Oh, sorry, can you say your name?
Oh, yes.
I know your
Stephanie.
name, but...
Stephanie Keating-Baird, 1 Hampshire Drive, Apartment F, Nashua. I'm also a teacher at Fairgrounds Middle School and a member of the executive board of our Nashua Teachers Union. Mrs. Judici spoke about trust. I don't know if you all remember this, but back a few years ago, we did a climate survey with the University of New Hampshire. And one of the main issues in that survey turned out to be the trust between the teachers and central office. Now, that is not to say that as human beings, the people at central office are bad people. It is just to say that every time we turn around, there's a new superintendent or a new assistant superintendent or new human resources director that have different ideas about the way our district should be run. And instead of asking us, this policy effectively makes it so that not only are we not allowed to question or contribute to what's going on in our district, but it is literally a crime to do so. And when you do, you face losing your job. I mean, here it says, well, that first issue, everything needs to go through the superintendent. Well, that might be all well and good, except that the superintendent doesn't happen to be the first person on the chain of command. So you go to your supervisor, and maybe you don't get any satisfaction from that, or the issue is not resolved. So then what do? There are some real issues in our school, right down to the philosophical ways that we educate our students, right down to the question of what our job really is as educators. Is it academics? Is it social emotional learning? How do we merge the two? The fact that we have had not very much meaningful professional development, and I can't even tell you how many years. And yet, we are not supposed to question any new initiative that comes along. I happen to be in the English department. I understand we're having a whole new curriculum come up. We just talked about this in Ed Council the other day. We had perfectly good UBDs that we could update and get us the resources that we need in order to make that curriculum work until we have the opportunity to look at new curriculum. But we were never asked, and that is part of the problem. And not only are we not going to be asked anymore, but we're not allowed to talk about it. I find that absolutely astounding. Absolutely astounding. I thought that we had a democracy. I thought that I was a valued employee. I guess I'm not. I'm not. I feel like this is a threat. I feel like I'm being threatened, that I can't say what I think or use my expertise because that might not be what somebody else thinks, or explain myself. And I have to tell you, I have heard, I'm going to be quite honest, professional ethics thrown in my face when I discussed a certain policy. And I don't appreciate that at all, that I will lose my job for standing up for what I believe is right, just in a private room, So I'm gonna leave it at that because unfortunately, I do need to work a few more years, but I guarantee you that I am not happy, nor am I an ignoramus. And I don't know how long I can continue to be treated like one. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Keating-Baird. Anybody else? Sure. Okay. Did you say 3 days left?
Yeah. Friday is your last day.
Oh. Well, you have our well wishes. No, just turned it off.
How about now?
Yeah.
So my name, unfortunately, Karen Kostara-Hoffman, and I'm up here speaking, but, and until Friday, I am a teacher, special ed teacher over at Birch Hill Elementary. And I am leaving the district, and I'm actually leaving education in general, because this year, I feel like this word's so overused, but this year has been traumatic. It's been traumatic for teachers, it's been traumatic for students, and it's been traumatic for a lot of parents as well, I think. And I have no proof of this as of yet, but I did speak out at a board meeting, I want to say in November, early November, and as to the working conditions, especially for special educators in the district. And not even a week later, I was given a letter of reprimand. And I believe that so I was non-renewed. I'll come right out and say I was non-renewed with the option to resign. And so I resigned. I fortunately have another job lined up, so that's not a problem outside of education, but I cannot imagine living, I mean, it's bad enough that at least I feel like part of the reason I lost my job is because I spoke out. And I can't imagine living in a society where things can be even worse than that, even worse than losing your livelihood. And I left a career that I had for a long time in government in order to become a teacher, to get my master's degree. And all I know is that all my work is done, all my paperwork is done, so I don't see any other reason why I would be let go other than the fact that I spoke out at a board meeting. So, excuse me, I just can't imagine living in a society that's even worse than that, where you could lose your livelihood, your license. For all I know, it could get even worse. Go to jail. I don't know. I don't know what the next steps are for this, but it's been, for lack of a better term, a hellish year. And yeah, I have no desire to stay in education anymore because it's been that bad. So that's all I have to say. I just can't imagine being in a society where there could be even worse consequences than that. And I believe that this proposed policy, sorry, been a long day. I think this proposed policy could absolutely lead to some worse circumstances than we're experiencing now. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you guys all for coming and speaking. I appreciate it. And thank you to the committee members for letting our guests come and have their say. So that is the last item on my agenda for today. Would anyone object to going ahead and moving it to the beginning, just since almost everybody here? No, yeah, yes, that's why, Stephanie. No, no, it's because you guys have worked all day, and I assume you want to eat dinner at some point. All right. Well, then, in that case, you
And
might
where's
as well
our
stay.
dinner? You
Right?
didn't bring us dessert?
Yeah, we didn't drink yet.
Okay. So let's hit the ground running then and go right to the end and do BHC, Board Employee Communications, first. So what we have in the packet is something that I didn't see until the agenda had come out last time. I don't know where it came from. Mr. Parker and I had not discussed it in our agenda planning meeting at all. So I don't know where it came from. And I let him know that it's the expectation, or it's at least my expectation as chair of this committee, that agendas be discussed between admin and the chair of a committee so that we all know what the plan is and there aren't surprises at the meeting. I emailed everybody today, and I just handed it out, Dover's version of this policy, which is the New Hampshire School Board Association version of the policy. Dover just inserts their own name. They make very minor changes. And it is significantly different than what was on our agenda. So I guess I'll put Ms. Carey on the hot seat. Do you know where this one came from? Or what the,
I believe this may, I'm not sure, I don't want to speak out of turn.
Is your mic on?
oh, your mic's not on. Sorry. You'll have to start over.
Yeah, I don't want to speak out of turn, and, I'm cannot say for certain, but, this came from Central, I would assume, Central Office. Like I said, I'm just filling in tonight, so.
Right. I mean, it obviously would have to be someone.
Right.
At Central
So
Office,
this may have come from the superintendent, but I don't want to say with certainty. So it looks like this policy here, now, you've gone through this and compared it to the actual policy, the NHSBA policy?
Yeah, so this one is the NHSBA policy, and you can see that it
Which is Dover's, okay.
which is Dover's, but it's the same. It's just what I had access to print out from my house. So Dover's is, you can see it, it's like 2 pages long, has a lot of other stuff, and ours is much significantly shorter, and it's just written very differently. Now, we don't have a BHC now at all. So I guess the question I have is this something that we need to have a policy regarding board employee communications? And if so, what we want it to look like. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. I'm not going to support this at all because, if you look at, and I want to thank Mr. Hoffman for giving me a call, and I couldn't speak that long because I was going in and out of Hollis the other day, but as soon as I got home, I went online. The Public Employee Freedom of Expression, 98-E, and 1 and 1-A. You can't do this. I remember in November, people were screaming about parents out here. Matter of fact, they were targeted as domestic terrorists. But I'm not going to take away parents' right to come and speak. Why would I take away staff's right to come and speak here on the board? The superintendent works for us. I don't work for the superintendent. And so he really needs to answer to us. I'm not going to support this. I read this against Dover's. I don't care what the New Hampshire School Board Association says. I want my stuff run by our own attorney to make sure, because it's not going to be the New Hampshire School Boards Association that's going to come and handle a legal case. It's going to be our city attorneys that's going to do that. So we keep going to the New Hampshire School Board Association. We have attorneys that I pay in my taxes here that should be advising us. And that's where I think that it should go. I'm not supporting this. I want to know who wrote this, because I think this is disgraceful. I don't even like having to run, and when we get to our part here, that I have to ask the superintendent if I need to get something in central office. I'm tired of asking this. I never asked this before when I was on the board the first time, and we never had anything like this. And I'm listening to Mr. and Mrs. Hoffman talking about the First Amendment rights here. Okay, this is a complete violation of this. And I'm not going to be any part of this, because my biggest thing is when you hear Mrs. Hoffman talking about what's happening with her job and the democracy and what's going to happen once we take this piece away, there is no democracy left in this country. We might as well live in communism, and I'm not ready for communism right now. I like my freedoms, and I like my freedom of speech, and I might not agree with the teachers union and the teachers all the time, but it's their right to come before us and tell us what's going on here, because, and again, I'm going to say, back when I was on the board, we were encouraged to speak to people in central office. We were encouraged to see the principals and go into the schools and see what's happening and talk to the staff. We're not encouraged, we're discouraged now. And I think that is wrong, because there's things that I'm not going to, if people say something to me confidentially, and I don't feel it's in my realm, I'm going to say to them, hey, that's not what you need to tell me, and I shouldn't be penalized if somebody talks to me either. I'm a board member. I represent the citizens of this city, the taxpayers and the parents. So I think this is a little bit out of hand, so I'm not supporting it tonight. Thank you.
The only other, is to maybe, if I can suggest we have Dover's policy, going back and getting some more information behind the scenes on this, because the language is different, and let's take a look at the Dover. I mean, even the opening line, desires open and collaborative relationship with members,
The tone is
it's totally different.
completely
So
opposite.
what I would suggest is we go back and get some more information and revisit this again. And I'm happy to do that, and then we can, Heather, we can follow up.
Yep, I'm not opposed to going back to the drawing board on this. They're in Dover's. I'm not really excited about, I'm not excited about what Ms. Johnson was saying about us just visiting a school, just showing up. There were problems in the past with, with school board members who showed up and would just pull teachers out of classrooms and start asking them questions because
Well, that's, yeah, that's a separate
a
issue.
citizen had said, hey, we have a concern with this teacher, and the board member would take it upon themselves to go investigate it. So that's not what I'm suggesting you did. I'm just saying.
But
That's a
I'm just
separate
saying,
issue
I think
from
it's
this,
two
yeah.
different, we have different boards now.
So-
And I don't think anybody on this board would go in there and pull a teacher out.
I don't think so either. And this one from Dover says, let's do some reasonable notice to the principals. Right now, we're going through the superintendent when we need to do that. I do think that,
This is no better. No better. Same issue.
well, I'm just going to say one thing. I do think that if there is something to do with a grievance or a personnel complaint where the board would be the one to adjudicate it, an employee needs to take that thought, needs to think about that before going to a board member. Not to say that you shouldn't go to the board member, but if you do, know that the board member is going to have to recuse themselves when it comes to the grievance because they have already gotten your side of it and may have formed an opinion. Having said that, I've been in meetings with the union and employees that had issues, and I've been in meetings with employees who've had issues with people very high up the chain of command where they didn't really have anybody to go to other than the board. And so I do think that it is important that we allow for people to continue to seek out, at a minimum, the president of the board to say, hey, I'm having this issue, and I would like some assistance in resolving it. And then the president of the board can take it to the board attorney, which is what I've done in the past, and get legal advice on how to handle that, as long as we don't go running half-cocked doing what we want. Go ahead, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. I normally don't ask the union to give us anything, but I know, but I would just like to see, what would you change in this, if anything, or just, I want input here, because that's what we should have, and like Ms. Raymond said, one of the problems coming to talk to us, again, is that if there's a grievance hearing, we can't be impartial at that point in time, and you don't know, if we have to, one or two of us have to recuse ourselves, that could be either being in your favor or against, whatever it is, and that could be a big thing on a board of 9, and a board of 15 is not that bad, but you're down to 7 now. But I think there needs to be some type of mechanism here that if staff, teachers have an issue, that it's not this complicated, that they can seek out who they can work with and talk to. Because this, to me, is just, even the one that we got from Dover, I already wrote all over that today, and I'm just saying, this isn't, yeah. It's
not much different than
no, it's not. So I think my biggest thing would be, I think, let's send it to our legal, see what our legal says, come back, and then you have a chance to look at it, the union has a chance to kind of get a look at it. If they want to send it to their lawyer, I'm being open on this one.
Right.
No, and I think
It's open.
this is what I was saying last night, too, is we want to hear what people are saying. It's very difficult to know what somebody's going to say next, so it's hard for us as the guides of the meeting to say when it's time to stop talking, because we don't want to have to recuse ourselves, is finding that, what I was saying earlier, that grace area of, reviewing policies before you come into meetings and say something so that you're presenting it in the most appropriate way so that the end result can be in your best favor. And I think creating a policy where we, know what that is clearly gives people a better opportunity to be heard when there is going to be an outcome of something.
I think also that there has to be a mechanism here that if they go to a superior and they speak about an issue, that they're not going to have to worry about their job being threatened either. That's one of the biggest things
Right,
here.
doesn't the union provide some protections for that?
Literally
Takes it away.
It
Okay.
says, because there's a professional code of ethics and code of conduct for teachers.
All right, so we're hearing that this policy could interfere with their ability to utilize their union contract.
Grievance policy.
The right to let you go or remove your license if you say, I don't like my working condition.
Right, so, okay, wait, so I'm going to ask you guys to stop shouting out from the audience, because we're not getting it on the recording, and so that will be challenging for folks at home who can't hear you, and also anybody, trying to do the minutes later. But I hear what you're saying, that you're concerned that this might interfere with your contractually,
No, and that wouldn't be the intent of a
Contractual
policy. You certainly have the rights to talk about your terms and conditions of employment. I mean, so what I would suggest is we go back and get some more information on this and
Yep.
and
So-
just table this for now.
yeah, go up to the mic. Are you guys okay with that? Yeah.
No problem.
I like committees because they're like so much less formal.
Yeah.
It was actually really great when I had them at central office, less accessible for people, unfortunately, but then at least we were around like a conference table, so it felt more like a work session. Anyways, go ahead.
I'm pretty cynical, and you know me already. No, I'm pretty cynical, and what scares
entrance into any kind of
and what scares the heck out of me is the fact that it got to here, that Miss Carey has no idea who, and I'm not
Well,
smashing
Ms.
on
Carey's
you.
not on this committee
No,
typically.
no,
She's
no,
just
no, but
filling
I mean,
in.
when you asked her the question, does she know where this came from? She did not know, okay? And so someone had to write it. So it got sent here through, I would think, someone at central office, and geez, I wonder who that is, and got sent here through central office. And unless probably we put up a little bit of a fight, other than Paula, it could have slid right through
I don't
to
think so.
go to the full board. So that's what really scares me. And like I said, that cynic gene is telling me that, that is where the problem is. Thanks.
Well, I tend to agree with you, and like I said, I've already spoken with Mr. Parker, who's my usual helpmeet here for this.
He's the
Liaison.
The liaison, thank you. So about the fact that he can't just add things to the agenda without me seeing it beforehand. We have to agree together on the agenda. And I'm not opposed to things coming from admin. Lots of stuff comes from admin because
Normally the
they know what
process-
they're doing.
And normally the process would be, we would have these discussions and vet these ahead of time.
Right, and so
So
if
that's
I
fine,
thought something had no chance of passing, I could quietly say that behind the scenes.
Right, and I appreciate that. But the whole thing with
Like,
with what we're dealing with is transparency, and there just is not a whole lot of transparency. And, And if you don't recognize that, I'm kind of scared why I voted for some of you. If you can't recognize that, that there is no transparency sometimes. I mean, and I just know, I listen to every board meeting, I listen to every committee meeting. I'm very invested in what happens to the education of our kids here in Nashua. My son went through, got a great education. But the thing is, the two ladies that were leading the search for the superintendent, so to speak, they came and they professed that it was going to be totally transparent, absolutely 100% transparent. People on the board, yeah, it's going to be transparent. And after they left and they made their presentation, it was like crickets. And, that's not transparency, at least my definition of it, so, okay, but thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so on BHC, does anyone have any objections to sending this back to admin for
Clarification?
clarification?
Nope, I'd like to table it. I'll make a motion to table it and send it back
Okay,
to admin.
I'll second that.
motion to table BHC. I'm going to say pending further info from admin. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Great. Okay. So, B. Yep.
Thank you for coming.
I would like to know who voted. I put that in my email, though. So when you find that out, let us know. Hey, thank you all. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you, have a good night.
Try to get out of here quick.
Yeah.
I don't know if the person who wrote it is going to want to come out and be like, that was mine, after the... It's like when you write an essay and it gets ripped to shreds and you're like,
I think the intent of the policy is to just have some type of,
I think it's
order to the, in the questions and all.
I know.
but-
I try to
and
be-
To be able to prepare ahead of time. So the intent of the policy is positive. It's just let's go back and take a look at it. And
I'm really struggling with the intent of the policy being positive, and I'm usually willing to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and I try really hard to work with everybody, but I read this policy and just about fell out of my chair. So this is one of those ones that a small conversation would have saved a lot of grief.
And I read it more as kind of controlling us.
Right, me
Teachers.
too. I was like, oh no,
Ethical
none of the board
conduct
members are
was
gonna,
what
like, she said she thought some of us would vote for it. I bet this would get 0 votes. 0. So,
I'm glad I came tonight.
yeah.
And who would think that I would agree with the union? And Mr.
this is-
Hoffman, this is like like last night. I was a winner last night.
Something's going on. Is it like a full moon or?
No, maybe it's all those chemtrails. I don't know.
All right, let's go back to the beginning. The first one is BBAA. Ms. Bishop had helpfully created a list for us of our policies that were out of date.
Well, this was done in 2020. We have to do them every 4 years.
Why do I have this one as 2017?
No, it was updated.
the new one, I think, was updated, wasn't it?
I'm
Yeah.
in BBAB, sorry. I didn't scroll up far enough.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
BBAA,
yeah, actually.
yeah, 2007.
To be completely honest, all of these were tacked on to the agenda without discussing any of it with me.
I think it was,
None of the ones in the Bs are on my list for ones that are, oh, here it is. It's up here, but it's skipped over like 5 other things to get there. So I don't know why it was brought now.
so sometimes it was, well, just when I was doing it, is some of these needed to be vetted past other administrators, like, finance or HR, like not every policy Mr. Parker could look at and know that it was current.
Right,
So some of them needed to get farmed out, and we did start kind of taking things out of order because who was available to review those policies?
I get it, but there was no conversation, and I don't know if anyone has picked up on my irritation, but I'm going to lay it all out there. I talked to Ms. Ziem today, and she said to me, we were talking about how you never guess where I stand. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not.
These left over from the ones that we didn't get to when
No.
you were out,
No,
Weren't these the one from the left over from the last
that we didn't
policy meeting?
finish from
the
when
last
Paula's-
policy meeting, but they were thrown onto that last policy agenda without my discussion.
No, I think they were left over from when Paula ran the meeting, and
They
we
weren't.
didn't get to finish.
They weren't. The other ones on that last policy agenda were left over from April.
Right.
And so when Mr. Parker and I met, we talked about those that were left over. We talked about all of other ones. And then when the agenda came out, all of a sudden, these other ones were just there. And then last week, we were like, well, we'll just do them next week. But none of them had been mentioned when he and I sat down, which, again, is kind of behind-the-scenes kind of stuff, and that's fine, and there's other stuff going on. The point being, it's very difficult to come into a meeting completely unprepared and not knowing the genesis for why something has taken, like, why are we discussing it now? Is it because it needs to be updated? If it's not in the order of the updating, like, what makes it pressing now? And I don't like not being able to answer that question for myself or for other board members who might ask. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, as long as we get caught up. But where I was going with all this, and now I've lost my paper, is the ones we have this evening are the Bs. I think the only one that is really due, it doesn't matter. So BBAA is board member authority. It does make sense to kind of do these as we were looking at the ethics policy and some of the other policies, so I'll go with that. Basically what was done, as I have sat down and done quite a bit of research on all three of the remaining policies, is our policy was entirely crossed out and replaced completely with the New Hampshire School Board policy. So that's where all of the language on this one, the next one, and the one after. The only differences between what is typed here and the actual school board association policy is changes to make it applicable to Nashua, so president instead of chairperson or et cetera. Do we want to discuss or make a motion to begin with? Ms. Johnson?
I want to discuss it because I have some changes again.
Okay.
First of all, I don't understand why everything is going through the New Hampshire School Board Association. Everything's being changed.
Because we paid $10,000 a year to do that.
Yeah, well, maybe we shouldn't pay them $10,000 a year anymore, because, again, we're relying on them where we should be relying on our own attorneys to read this and say, is this okay? If this is okay, then we don't have to change it for their language, because their language isn't always the best. Because here,
It's not always the best, but it's nice to have it standard across the state where lots of school
I'm not
districts are
really
similar.
that thrilled about the New Hampshire School Board Association and some of the comments that they've made. But paragraph 2, each board member shall review the agenda and study materials distributed prior to the meeting and be prepared to participate in the discussion and decision-making for each agenda item. Each agenda will provide an opportunity for board members to comment on district activities and/or educational issues. These comments may become topics for future board discussions. Well, this is what I'm always talking about. You're telling us to review the agenda, okay? But when you're reviewing the agenda, when we get it, you want to go back and read everything, but we can't read anything because we have to watch everything. And that's because we don't have verbatim minutes. We have summaries, and the summary isn't even a summary half the time of what's gone on. And so I've really, and again, I tried to put that in the budget, remove a couple things, put things in the budget. I really believe we should have verbatim minutes should be available versus non-existent summary to review anything to be changed and submitted on the consent agenda. I mean, it's like we're spending money hand over foot here, and even in the city level, they're asking $70,000 for a new right-to-know law paralegal for Kim Kleiner, and we can't even find any money in here So maybe that's where that $100,000 that the mayor wants to take out of our budget, so he can pay $70,000 for a paralegal now.
You should go to public comments and say that when they
I
do
don't
the
have a
budget.
problem, but it's just coordinating everything. I'm waiting, I have to call Mr. Griffin to get a budget book. I don't have a problem with that, you know that.
Yep.
But here, you know, you want us to be prepared, and if we need to go back and read something, we can't read it anymore. We have to watch it. And it's really hard because you got to stop it, and if you have to write stuff down, I don't take shorthand. I never learned shorthand. I didn't even like to type in high school and junior high. So,
They don't even teach it now.
yeah, at least I would have had that skill back then. But, you know, it makes it hard for not only board members, it makes it hard for the public too, if they want to be able to come in and read something.
Okay.
And I really believe that that should have been put back in the budget. At least, it doesn't have to be maybe for committee meetings, it just needs to be for the full board, because so much happens at that full board meeting on conversations.
Okay.
So that's what my little wording would be.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, I guess I don't understand what the wording is that you're changing there, because it says you're going to review the materials that were provided to you before the meeting so that we can talk about it.
But what materials are really provided? I mean,
Like the 100-page packet that we get every week.
but there's no minutes in there.
There never were.
There were at the beginning until we lost Jackie Waters.
I've been on the board for 5 years, and there have never been minutes attached to my packet.
I always thought there was minutes attached to the packet.
No.
And if the, okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but then there were minutes that you can go and read online.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. You can't do that anymore.
That's true.
But this is saying, really studying the materials that are distributed. So this is what it's referring to, the packet of information, the policies that come out, the, speaking for me, the HR committee, taking a look at the list, if there's any questions ahead of time or whatever, just being prepared so that's what that piece is talking about. You're only as good as the information you have, at least. So it's just saying, take your packets and just be prepared, is what what the language is saying.
Ms. Johnson is always prepared. She always has her
Yes.
notes, and she's always
And I'm not,
like,
I'm
I have
saying
this
that's just
note.
what this is. This is just as the board, this is what this paragraph is saying. Just be prepared with the material that you've been given. So,
I kind of feel that I'm not prepared, okay, because I have my little tablet here, and I don't like it, but it was good last night. I mean, it's good to search things. But I need the paper so you could see as I write all over everything.
Right.
I mean,
But I
that's all it's saying, is for the members to be prepared.
But I think we miss a little bit of preparedness, because when we're asked to vote on the consent agenda, I can't go back to read anything to see if there's anything that's misrepresented, something that's wrong. You've got to listen to everything now.
Well, if you're going back on the consent, if you're looking at the consent agenda is saying that you're consenting to the official minutes, which are what are posted, not that you're consenting to every single individual thing that happened. So when we vote on the consent agenda and you're voting to accept the minutes, it's the minutes that are there that you remember are relatively, well, actually, are accurate to what happened in the meeting. Now, I know you don't feel that they are, and that's fine, but the obligation is only to read what is there, and then if you don't think that they're accurate, raise something saying, listen, this summary, like, I would like them to be verbatim, but that's not happening right now because we don't have the staff for it, but you missed this whole giant piece of it that I think is germane to the record, the official record of this meeting. And I think that is I think anyone would find that perfectly reasonable if someone missed an entire section or a topic of conversation.
What I'm hearing about that, though, is sometimes we talk over each other and interrupt each other, and there's a lot of back and forth. And when they're listening to, and that's kind of the meat of where a lot of our stuff happens. And what I'm hearing is when they're doing the minutes like that, we're so inaudible at times that they can literally just go inaudible. And then that whole section wouldn't even be in there anyway because we're all talking too much. So that's just one piece, but.
Right. I mean, it would be nice to have somebody who was trained to do minutes. You know what I mean? like Jackie was, and like Miss Gilio does for Chelmsford. Like it's a skill set. It's not something that you can just pick up and do. Okay, what else for language?
And I just want to say something on that. We were very lucky to have Jackie all those years.
Yes, we
She
were.
was an excellent person. And some people have to learn to raise their hands and be recognized,
That is
like when we're in school. And then the last paragraph, the Board of Education as members shall deal with administrative services through the superintendent and not just give orders to any subordinates of the superintendent, either publicly or privately. And I have a real problem with that because of the fact that when we send emails out, and I know the superintendent isn't happy with me, but I just list everybody right there, and it goes to everybody. But we should be able to request, not demand, request, and say to maybe Mr. Parker, could you please supply me with this information? Or Mr. Donovan, I'd appreciate it. In your time, could you please send me this information? Not everything should have to go through the superintendent. And this is exactly what we were just hearing about staff.
And the practice has changed. Historically, when I first came on the board, there were some administrators who would prefer, like if I had a budget question, I would, make a quick email to Dan Donovan, and he would write me back right away. And that took less time and less effort for everybody than me emailing the superintendent. But what happened, at least in this district, is we ended up having to start keeping a spreadsheet of all of the requests that were being made to district office staff. And we found that there were certain individuals who were requesting in excess of 30 things each month from various district office staff. And it got completely out of control. So then it got choked up, like, fine, you need to, at one point we had to vote on it as a board to get people to, really, do you really need this? Is this something that is appropriate? And then it went back to just ask the superintendent and then.
That's in that Dover one that you have, is anything that takes more than 120 minutes is subject to being brought to the board for approval.
Right. Well, I think we have to be respectful of people's time. Having said that, my concern with that line, and I agree with Ms. Johnson on one level, is that it says administrative services. When I read it the first time, because it was not a capital admin, I was thinking of secretarial services. And of course, we don't have a board secretary. So we are constantly asking
Tara and Gabby,
yep, the superintendent's administrative assistants, for assistance with things, and it is entirely right and proper that we do so. Not to excess, obviously, but, if I need to pick up a photocopied copy of a packet, I'm not going to email the superintendent for that. I'm going to email the lady who does the photocopying and find out when she's going to be available and has time to do it, or doesn't have time to do it, So, or if I need to schedule a meeting, I would not call the superintendent for that. I would call the administrative assistant who has access to the calendar and everything else.
Yeah, I think that line is in there because the employees, other than the superintendent, report to the superintendent.
I understand.
And the board does not manage the direct reports, so that would be why that line would be in there. But I think in the situation with you reaching out to Gabby and Tara, that relationship has been established through the superintendent. But I think, so that would be part and parcel why that language would be in there. The other question I had, Ms. Johnson, what was the other change that I missed that you wanted to make to the paragraph above?
I wanted to do 2 paragraphs above about the review, to have the verbatim minutes.
She wants to put verbatim minutes into this policy, so that then we're required to have verbatim minutes. Honestly, I think as we go forward with some of these, and we're talking about, the superintendent is our only employee, for example, the more we talk about this administrative kind of stuff, the more, and discussions that we've recently had about press releases and some other things, it really is making me think that the board needs an administrative person that is the board's administrative person.
Yeah.
Who has access
yeah.
to the calendars to schedule things and can do those things if, in fact,
I see
we're
that-
not to be doing it directly with some of those
Yeah,
staff.
and I see that as a separate issue than putting something like that in a policy.
Right.
Totally separate. You're talking about a job function versus the policy.
Yep.
Because that paragraph, again, being prepared, is separate from verbatim minutes. That's what you would like, and I know you've been talking about that, Ms. Johnson, but that's a separate issue.
I think that's something that taking a look at how much extra stuff people are doing for the board and how much of it is cutting into other time, is it fiscally more responsible to have a board secretary to stand on their own than, I don't know if everybody works late when they're doing stuff for us, if they're still able to meet their job responsibilities, but I think it would be interesting to evaluate if Tara and Gabby and other administrators are providing us with things that a secretary could review and find, for not an administrator's salary, for a more appropriate photocopying, getting information salary. So I think I did vote for that at the budget to get us a secretary in there. Just
Yeah. So can I ask for two things? Whoever added this did not edit it from the School Board Association language at all. So if we pass it, we need to make sure that we've changed chairperson to president everywhere it shows up in here. And two, if we're talking about administrative services as being our district administrators, then I think that that's what we should say, not administrative services, secretarial services. Does that make sense? Because to me, that's very different.
So the Board of Education and its members shall deal with,
District administrators.
And I think it would be good for us.
although district administrators is not administrative services. I think of administrative services as clerical.
That's what I think
Yeah.
too, but we need access to clerical. And it's okay for us to have this reminder that we don't tell the assistant superintendents and the, head of guidance or the head of CTE what to do.
But I think it's
Or we just
important
cross that whole damn thing out and I'm happy with it. Excuse
I'll
me.
deal with
I
district.
think it's important, though, because, let's say, if I had a budget question or I had a finance and operations question, I wouldn't go to Dan myself. I would email Paula and say, I have a question about this, and then I feel like it's appropriate for Paula to then talk to Dan, because they're the two people that run finance and ops. And then if something outside of that is more of a like Dan would have to do something extra, CC Garthen on the email. But if policy, I'll email Heather and say, I have a question about this. I
Right.
wouldn't necessarily go straight to the administrator. I would go through our board
Chairperson.
tree, and then that identified person who works with the committee liaison.
That's
then
exactly what I do too. I'd ask Sandra or Paula.
Right.
So what do we want to do about that last line? Are you happy with it? Do you want to change it?
Well, I don't, if the superintendent is busy, then we have to take time out for him to read all these emails. To me, there's no reason why you couldn't go to superintendents, assistant superintendents, or
My biggest issue is that,
to Dan.
right, my biggest issue is that we have historically had superintendents who don't bother to tell the board when they're not going to be in the office or who to contact in their absence. So hopefully, as we move forward with new superintendents, we won't have that problem anymore.
Yeah. I think if this becomes an issue.
Because I
then we
don't
can-
care who, just tell me who.
Yeah, because, I'm sorry, I feel like we walk a fine line. I feel like if we change this, if you want to, administrative services to me is still clerical.
Okay.
Because then, the second line, if you read it, superintendent, and shall not give order to any subordinates of the superintendent. So I think leaving it as is, if it becomes an issue, I think then we address it. If,
I really hate the idea of approving a policy that we have every intention of not following tomorrow. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to follow this policy except for that last line that we already don't follow and I have no intention of following because we already do this.
How about,
So I would just get rid of, shall make requests through the superintendent and shall not give orders to any subordinates, like something like that, where it is a little bit more in line with what Dr. McKinney's been asking us to, which is making requests to him. But we still need to be able to do that administrative work directly with his.
The Board of Education and its members shall not give orders to subordinates. What if you start the sentence there? Because that's really.
Sure. Because we're asking for assistance usually.
Right. So the Board of Education and its members shall
Not give orders.
not give orders to any subordinates of the superintendent, either publicly or privately.
Like it. Okay.
That says it
and
all.
how about the superintendent and the chairperson will create a way in which to
Each member's,
use administrative services most effectively?
each board member shall give.
I don't think that
advance
needs to be a
notice.
policy. That's a procedure.
Oh,
It's a plan. I think that should happen,
Yeah.
right.
but it doesn't need to be reinvented every
So I just,
year or something.
all right, so just to sum up these changes that we're making to this paragraph, we're going to go through this and make sure that anywhere it says chairperson, we change it to president. Okay. And then we are going to change the last paragraph to read, "The Board of Education and its members shall not give orders to any subordinate of the superintendent, either publicly or privately."
Yes,
Okay.
It was already in here.
it was, and then it got taken out, and now we've put it back in.
Yeah.
Right, so,
Well, that's perfect.
okay, so
All right, so we're looking for,
that one we've, that's about it, yep.
yep, okay. So I move that we send BBAA to the full board with the changes discussed.
You made the motion?
Yep,
I'll second it.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Okay, the next one I have is BBAB, which is roles and duties of the board president. Once again, we just took, they, whoever, just took the one that we had, crossed the entire thing out, and then put the School Board Association's version. And just, in this case, they did change chairperson to president.
And on the president shall have the right, as other board members have, to offer motions, discuss questions, and vote. That's within Robert's Rules of Order.
Where is that?
Yeah, I thought the president couldn't make motions.
You can't under Masons, I believe.
So,
You look at Lori Wilshire, she'll have to step down to speak on.
yep,
Ms. Johnson, which one are you?
Oh, that's on page 2.
page 2, number 4.
And it's right under number 4. Put
Yeah.
motions to a vote and announce the vote.
So yes, in Robert's rules, you can.
You can, okay.
So the board president, just like a committee chair, can make a motion. It's typically better for someone else to, but a lot of times on new business, it makes sense for the board president to make the motion because they already know what the wording is supposed to be.
Right.
Based on the memo or whatever that is in the packet. We've gotten around it by saying, I'm looking for a motion that says, and then reading verbatim what was discussed. Another thing that was actually suggested to me is to always have the president vote last, so as not to influence the other members' votes.
I do vote last.
I know you do. It just happens.
By nature of the pulling of the names,
Right?
ceremonial
Yep.
call of order.
Does anyone have any, oh, I'm sorry, it was after 4, number 5. Does anyone have any changes or problems with that one?
Well, do we want to, it doesn't say anything about the clerk keeping the minutes.
Oh,
which I think is important.
You know what, it doesn't say it in the previous one either.
You want to add it in?
Yeah,
The clerk shall maintain the minutes of all board meetings.
yeah, I would put it before in the absence of the president,
Okay.
So, 1, record the minutes.
Record or maintain, record, okay.
The minutes of all meetings of the board. Oh, minutes at, I guess, all meetings. of the board. The other thing that wasn't in here, there were a couple of things that weren't in this one that were in the original one. So our original policy allows the board, the president of the board, to act as an ex officio member of all committees. That is not in the new one, and I believe that we should have it. Because otherwise, Jen couldn't come in to make a quorum if the other two, you know what I mean? And that's been something that, with our board, we've done many times over the last several years.
So where do you want to put that, Heather?
I don't know, I guess number 8 here.
Okay.
And then the other thing that we had in ours that isn't here is the one right above it, too, that they appoint all the committees,
Right.
Okay.
which is like the main, you know, our president has a lot of jobs. And perhaps maybe the president shouldn't have so many jobs. I don't know. Oh, yeah, it does, right here, number 4.
Yeah, number 4.
Okay, never mind. It's just much shorter. Okay.
Hold on a second.
The other question that I just wanted to put to the committee is whether or not we are in favor of the board president being the person who is the official spokesperson for the board. That's pretty much where it's fallen, but there was a time when that, before COVID, when we didn't have somebody calling for interviews all the time, they would call various members of the board. You know, the telegram before the telegraph, before it turned into not a newspaper anymore, back when it was a daily, they would call whoever they could get, like they would just go down the list. But now it seems that most of the media agencies know who the president is, and they just call directly to the president. I'm happy with having a designated person, but
But you can't tell a board member that they can't speak to the press.
no, certainly not. We're just saying that that's part of the duties of the president, is to be the person that if nobody else wants to. The president gets to be the person to talk to them.
I don't have a problem with the, I don't speak, there's no press out there really anymore, anyway.
Right? Okay.
So is this good with the edits?
Any other?
What are you putting in? Sorry.
All I did was take the president of the board shall act as ex officio and add it as number 8.
Okay.
That's it. That's the only change I had. Did anybody else have any more?
Yes, on the back, under duties of the clerk.
Oh, I'm sorry,
You
I
had
was
added
wrong.
the clerk shall record all minutes
Of the
of all
board.
meetings of the board.
Record the minutes at all meetings. Okay. Record the minutes. Okay. So I make a motion to send BBAB to the full board with changes discussed. Have you got it, or do you need my notes?
I got it.
Okay, because last time I was writing them on here, exactly what they were on the actual minutes, but this time I didn't.
I've got them.
Okay.
Yes.
So did anyone second the motion to send
I will.
them? Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And then the last one I have is BDBH, which I apologize, guys, my papers have gotten all mixed up. This is public participation at board meetings, which is what Ms. Zeem had been talking about wanting to discuss last night. Again, they crossed out our one and then copied the one from the School Board Association, but this one has been tweaked a little bit from what the School Board Association had. So, yeah. Did anyone have any comments or questions? Because I didn't.
I do.
All right.
Number 2, I want to know, how did we come up with
Oh,
this?
I'm sorry, can we do number 1 first?
Oh, okay. The board will provide a maximum of 15 minutes to hear public comments at the beginning of the regular board meeting. This period will be extended by a majority of the vote of the board. Additionally, the board may include additional public comment period for specific agenda items with a time limit for public comment specified on the pertinent agenda. I'll start with that one.
I just want to strike maximum. We do say 15 minutes on the agenda, but when there's like 5 people to speak, you know what I mean? We don't put on the timer and say, okay, we're cutting everybody off right at 15 minutes unless we take a vote. But if there are 45 people there, we might say every 15 minutes we're going to re-up it because we don't know how long it will take. So for me, I don't like the word maximum in there.
The only thing is, though, I think you're better off putting it in and then making an adjustment if you need to. Whether you put language in it, you know, the board president may.
I would just strike the word maximum. That's it. And the reason I would strike the word maximum is because in Nashua, it's New Hampshire, first of all. We have a proud civic tradition of engaging in our politics and our public meetings here. But frequently we have nobody here to talk. But sometimes there are lots of people here, and there are times when we've known it was going to be a hot topic, and we put in 30 minutes. Back when we had the question of the riflery program, we went ahead, we knew 15 minutes wasn't going to cut it. So the superintendent and I created an agenda that said, we're going to have, I think we said 30 minutes on this particular agenda, knowing that we'd need like 2 hours. So
right.
I know it's hard for administrators, but I would encourage administrators who aren't the superintendent to discuss with the superintendent if they need to stay past the discussion on the committee that they work on. Like, do you know what I mean? Does Dan need to stay all the way to the end of new business if we're taking it a long time? I don't know, that's not my purview. But trust me, you came in good, because when I came on the board 5 years ago, our meetings lasted routinely until 11 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Every time. It was so nice to get back down to 2 or 3 hours.
All right, so then if you want to do that, take a maximum of out. Take those 3 words out.
Yep.
Okay.
Anybody else on number 1?
Well, there's nothing in here that talks about 2 public comment periods.
No, that's something that we do. We don't have to do 2 public comments. We don't even have to do 1. So the second public comment is just,
You've got that language here, Ms. Johnson, the second sentence. Additionally, the board may include additional public comment period for specific agenda items.
Yeah, but usually it's
The first public comment period is for specific
items.
items, and ours, the second public comment period, is for anything you want. So that is problematic. This is what happens when we don't edit these ahead of time.
All right, so the board will provide 15 minutes to hear public comment at the beginning of
Items on the
the
agenda.
period may be
Yeah.
extended, blah, blah, blah. Additionally, the board may include Do you
So
want to,
the
instead of
first
additional,
sentence
do you
should
want to say a second public comment period?
So it should read, "The board will provide 15 minutes to hear,"
The board will provide 15 minutes for public comments for.
Agenda items.
For agenda items, yep.
yeah.
Clean
The
cut.
board will provide 15 minutes to hear public comments for items on the agenda at the beginning of each regular board meeting. Okay, 15 minutes.
We're going to do will or may?
Will.
Okay.
That's our policy. If we want to not do it, then we'd have to say, I move to change the rules to not have public comment period this evening, just like we would when we have a HR meeting right before the board meeting, and we have to change the rules every time.
So the board will provide 15 minutes to hear public comments for items on the agenda at the beginning of each regular board meeting. So that's the first one. And then the second sentence will stay the same. This period may be extended by a majority vote of the board.
Yep.
And then that second part is additionally, the board may include additional public comment, period. But you do anyway, so is this where you want to redefine that?
And additional public comment period, and then,
Do you want to say will? Because you know, it's part of your
no, may.
comment period for specific agenda items.
So instead of for specific agenda items,
Okay.
in that case, it should say,
That one's not specific agenda items, that's the,
right, it's the
Whatever.
following new business. So
Yeah.
additionally, the board may include an additional public comment period, not limited to items on the agenda.
Well, I kind of like this, because I think sometimes what happened, especially when we had the meetings where, you know, there were a handful of people who wanted to address something less flashy on the agenda, and then we had 17 other people who wanted to talk about, let's say, masks. And those 4 people, like, that got
They got
missed.
to go first, yeah.
So when you do, you may include additional public comment periods. We can say we know masks are going to be a hot button issue. We have a separate public comment.
Sure.
And then you can do may include and then have the specific agenda items. And then things don't get lost. And then we don't always do that. We're not always going to have an agenda with hot button issues on it that need to be teased out.
But we need to, I guess for me, we need to very specifically say that you get to speak before we make any votes on the things that we're talking about tonight. Then nobody else gets to speak until we've done the business of the district that is on the agenda. And then if you want to speak on something that's not on this agenda, it might be your hot button issue, but it's not on this agenda for the business of the district, then you have to wait.
No, I think we're talking about 2 different things. So how I'm reading this is you can tease out public comments. So if you want to do, like, just have a focused, we want to talk about unicorns.
Right.
And this is the 15 minutes to talk about unicorns. Then we're not reading, then, because the president's supposed to do public comment in first come, first serve. Then you can have a separate, we know these people want to talk about unicorns, and then when we get into the regular.
Then you'd need a third line, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
Because the way it reads now is, at the beginning of at the board meeting, it's public comments, no holds barred. And then you might schedule another one for specific public comments. Our practice here in Nashua has been the opposite.
Right.
Right.
Of what this reads. And so I think we need to flip it. If you
I
want
look
to
at
have
this
a
as-
third line saying, and we can schedule, in the middle of the 2, if you want to switch the, an additional one after new business for topics not on the
I
agenda,
think it just
that's
gives,
fine.
so the specific agenda items, so I'm reading this as you have the first one, so the first sentence, you have 15 minutes to hear public comments on agenda items.
Right, which we
Then we
added.
have the opportunity to tease out a different 15 minutes for specific agenda items, then people know to sign up for
And then
that
you need a
one.
third line, though.
Then we would need a third line to say, and then we may offer, or will, or whatever we want to do,
May.
the open public comment about whatever you want to say.
I don't know that you need 3. I think you've got the first one for specific agenda items, because if you know masks are going to be a hot button, maybe you put that on the agenda. Or I think just adding that last one, saying additional public comment period for non-specific agenda items.
I think that as long as we have a policy saying that we're going to have at least 15 minutes allowed for public comments on the agenda, if the president of the board and the superintendent, when making the agenda, knows that masks, for example, is probably something that we'll need, you could say, we're going to hear from public health, then we're going to have a comment period regarding masks.
Right.
Then we're going to have the consent agenda, blah, 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 blah. Then we're going to do public comments for other items on the agenda. You can always throw in more public comments.
But that's how I'm reading that's how I'm reading this policy as saying, because it doesn't say may include additional public comment period for non-specific agenda items. It says for specific agenda items with a time limit for public comments specified on the pertinent agenda. So I'm reading that as, that's how it says, is we have the option of creating that sub.
We always have. We always have. But this, the difference between what the School Board Association policy is and our practice here is that in other districts in the state, they only offer a generalized public comment period.
Right.
They don't tease it out the way that we already have. And I don't think it's in our best interest to tease it out more. I don't know, what do you think, Paula?
I'm listening to both sides of the argument here. I think people really, I don't want to take public comment, reduce anything.
No.
I think people, when they come in, they know specifically what they want to talk about. So if there's a hot button on our agenda, we could have that sign-up sheet for people to speak on this particular thing, and we're going to allow a different amount of time on this, saying like, okay, example, masks. Here's a sign-up sheet for the masks, and we're going to allow 15 minutes, but we're going to extend it if we need to. And then have the sign-up sheet for other items on the agenda, and at the end, just regular
Comments.
Because my biggest thing, the next one, is that 3-minute issue here. I mean, we could say that we're going to, if needed, we will add an additional comment period for specific items.
Well, it says may include. That doesn't say
May
we have to. It
to.
just gives us the opportunity to tease out.
But if it
And
says it here
reorganize.
already,
I just think we're trying to edit something that doesn't fit it, and we'd have to change the wording.
I think you have it there already. You have the first part.
That's what I'm saying.
for
I like how this
comments
is
on the
written.
agenda. The only thing that I am suggesting you add is what your current practice is. In the second one, additionally, the board may include additional public comment period for non-specific agenda items. Add the word "non" right there. And then I think that covers you. You can do whatever.
Not non-specific agenda items. for-
Non-specific.
But those aren't agenda items for items not on the agenda.
at the end of
Yes.
the meeting.
Non-specific
I'm sorry, yeah, you're right, non-agenda items.
for
Take out the word specific, yes, yep. For non-agenda
a
items.
second, an additional public comment period not limited to items on the agenda, or
Either way.
for non-agenda items, I don't care.
You put it at the end of the meeting. You would put it like that.
Yeah, that's what you folks are doing now. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
So whatever way you want to put, so do you want it for a period, comment period for non-agenda items or items
Fine.
not on the agenda? It doesn't matter.
For non-agenda items.
Okay.
I like less words.
I'm with you.
Paula? 2?
2, additional speakers will be allotted 3 minutes. Where did we get this 3-minute allotment of time?
I don't know, because this hasn't been touched since 2008, and that's what it
You know what, I
said.
saw that, I think it came from something I read. I think it was in the NHSBA. I don't know, I read something where it was a suggested timeframe.
Right, I mean, we,
So that, these comments,
Right.
don't go on for 3 hours, although,
I have to say, we haven't gotten a lot of pushback on it. You know what I mean? We use the timer. There was a time when we had to use the timer, and 90% of the people were like, yes, I see this line out the door of people who want to talk, and so I will try and be concise. And then you got the occasional person who just kept talking, but everybody else kind of got irritated with them.
The only reason, because I know when I go to the Board of Aldermen, that 3 minutes, they got the clock on the wall, they got the clock here, and all of a sudden, you got a minute left, you got 50 seconds left, and it's just like, really? And when that
I
hits
wish
3
we had
minutes.
something that was green and then it turned yellow or something, so that you would know to hurry up and wrap it up.
Well,
Start playing music.
they start, I think that they cut you off, really, at the mic. That just kind of, because I guess because some people, we did 3 minutes, and I'm going to go back to the mayor. He just went on and on and on and on. So if we're going to do 3 minutes, if there's not a crowd, then you can, be a little bit more lenient. But I really would like 3 to 5 minutes, because that 5 minutes is, I know it's a longer period of time, but that 3 minutes sometimes, and then when you get the 3 minutes with some people, they don't even know what they're talking about.
They need that buzzer.
Right, they need the buzzer.
You know,
All right,
because
so
it's like-
do we want to strike that sentence or just leave it? Because I kind of like having a guideline, just FYI, try and keep it to less than 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But could certainly waive it. But Paula's right, I did not do a good job of when somebody from other elected officials in the city, and it's not just the mayor, like I've messed up with an alderman before, and like giving them more time because they were an elected official.
They don't
So-
afford me that when I go to the Board of Aldermen.
I know.
That 3 minutes, and it's just, I remember that because I watched it on TV.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I kept, that night that's when I was sick.
Is that from Robert's Rules
And
of
he
Order?
just wouldn't stop.
I also think that when people who do what we do
take it
come
from
and talk,
Robert's Rules of Order?
they know the rules, and you just assume they're going to stick to them.
Because when I went to the Board of Aldermen meeting, I forgot to say something, and I said, oh, I want to say,
Yeah.
Mrs. Johnson, 3 minutes, you're up, you can't say another word.
So it's got to be something standard, because it's what the School Board Association has in their training, too. And if it's the alderman, the School Board Association, other places I've seen it, too.
Yep.
I
Okay.
think it's been working, too. You leave it 3 minutes, but then you can make the adjustments. If but if there's 300 people in here, you might want to keep it to 3 minutes, so.
We've asked people to do less.
Yeah, and there is a way of, I've suggested this before, and I'm anticipating this not happening again, but I'm a silver lining type of person. But you don't always have to say a public comment to share your pleasure or displeasure with something that we're going to be voting on. If we know we're going to have an issue where maybe you don't want to speak, and they do this up at the State House, is you can just click in and say, I oppose this, or I support this, and then when it comes time to public comment, you can publicly say, we're acknowledging the 17 people here who oppose this, and there are 11 people here who support it. You don't necessarily need to talk, and we've read into the record what you've come here to represent.
Well, that would be great.
We could do
We
that.
need to put names and stuff with it, because it's
So-
public comment.
At the beginning of my term, I wrote all of this stuff up, and I have several files with all of this stuff, and then everybody stopped showing up to meetings. But I have all of these created because they're templates.
Yeah.
They're templates, and it's done, and I can have them ready to go and share them.
They should be, I wonder if you could share them with Tara and Gabby. And like, it's one of those things that should be in the book.
I think
Do you
it
know what I
is.
mean? Because we have the public comment sign-up sheet,
So I did it, and now you have to put your agenda item on first,
right?
on the first public comment, and then I keep all of the policies here that we reference in regards to public comment.
Right, but
There's a little thing of Robert's, I think you gave me that.
I did. I got it from Mr. Moser.
And then,
So
Yeah.
it tells you how old that is.
I
But,
ordered one too, it's a little foldy one, but you can take the policies with you.
Right.
And then, okay, it's not in here, but yeah, I had something printed out that also had our expectations for behavior that you are tacitly signing on to when you
yeah, I
sign
think
up for
people
public
took them all
comment.
up there.
No, I never used that one.
Oh, all right.
I stole it, I got legal to sign off on it, and then, again, everyone just stopped showing up, and I was like, oh.
All right, well, that's one of the things that Ms. Ziem was talking about. Okay, number 3,
I'm good,
I think it's fair. Number 4,
good.
5,
5,
Didn't we just change KE and KEB to something,
we
or
changed,
combine them? last night?
Yes, I know what you're asking. And we got rid of KEBR.
Okay, so it's not referenced in there?
No,
Okay.
we still have KE and KEB.
Okay.
I'm reading at number 5 because I put a comment here.
But we recently looked at both KE and KEB, and they both have been recently updated. Oh, excuse me. So,
And this, I mean, this is what I keep talking about, is we want to hear people and have them share with us, but we need to do it gracefully to let them know that they're, because, you know, I'm thinking of the people who come in here and they're impassioned and they're speaking about their kids. And maybe they're not reading off of something and they just kind of, you know, spontaneously utter all of this information. And are very offended when we try to corral that in, because what they're hearing is, we don't want to hear what you have to say. And what we mean to say is, we need you to do this in the proper manner.
yep. So, just a comment. 6 and 7 have been added to this one, and then a number of other school districts have adopted items 6 and 7 here across the state, because we were not the only district that had large unruly crowds protests. There was the one in Londonderry or Exeter, I forget which one.
Milford got pretty bad, too.
Milford was really bad. I think it was Exeter, where people were like screaming and yelling and rushing they have like just a table in the cafeteria, and they actually had to have the school board members leave. And then, of course, at the governor's executive council, people got arrested. So we don't want to hamper people's right to participate, but people also need to understand that threats are not protected by the First Amendment, and you can't disrupt a public meeting to the point where business can't be done. That's not protected speech either. So everybody else who showed up has a right to have their thing heard as well. So we need to be respectful of everybody's time.
Well, I've got the New Hampshire court case here about First Amendment, and I want to go back. I forgot that I had the ordinance from the Board of Aldermen, and they have 30 minutes.
For their total public comment period?
Items on the agenda or regarding actions taken by the board. Let's see, communications to include a period not to exceed 15 minutes or exception of orally presented communications. Okay. A period not to exceed 15 minutes. If accepted, I don't know if you want to kind of just maybe take a picture and then see if we should add any of this from them.
I have it from.
Okay.
I have it from back when we were having problems with public comments, what the city ordinance was, and.
We should really be within.
Yeah, they're more strict than we were.
3 minutes during, okay.
But I think people get particularly emotional when talking about their kids in a way that they don't when they're talking about a proposed parking
Their
ban.
fence. It's in their fence.
Yeah.
All right, so are we doing any other changes to 6 and 7?
Paula has notes.
Number 6, obscene speech, you can do that. Threatening, I wouldn't want to do that, but I mean, if they say that I'm going to beat you up and break your bones, I mean, that's something different.
Any threats are not constitutionally protected speech. Obscene, it has to be pretty bad to be considered obscene.
Right, and it's comments threatening bodily harm, yeah.
But honestly, if someone comes in here and starts talking about sex acts, I think it would be reasonable for the chair to, rule them out of order. This is a school board meeting.
Right. Exactly. I think that most of the time, the people who come in here are well-behaved. There are, a few, but I just think that maybe parents should understand that they really shouldn't be speaking that much in public about what's happening with their kids. I mean, I want to hear everything, but I mean, everybody, this hits YouTube.
And I've heard parents disclose things about their children, and I feel like they've outed their children's story in a little bit, that, you know what I mean? And you think, well, no one watches it, but so many people were watching it, and I felt bad for some of the kids, just like you would a parent who overshares on social media, you know? So.
Hey, I yell if my kids don't put pictures of my grandkids on social media.
So did you want any particular language changes there on
I
6,
just
7?
think that obscene speech, there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. That's protected under the First Amendment. They could
know.
swear at us all they want, and there's nothing we can do. If they come down and it seems like they're going to attack us, that's
different.
That's different.
Although I have to say, if someone was in here describing some graphic sexual, you know, something, I think it would be okay for the board chairperson to say, hey, that's not appropriate in this environment. Please act with, you know, a little bit more decorum when you address us.
Yeah, you could just say,
There may be students in the audience.
This
that
isn't
night.
relevant to the current proceedings or whatever. I think it's okay for us to say to people, don't do that.
Yeah.
And make it clear.
And as long as it says obscene in there, that's one of those things that, obviously, if somebody is going to be upset about being told that they need to stop sharing what they're sharing because it's obscene, it's one of those, like, if they're going to really follow through on that and take us to court about it, is the judge would then have to decide what the, if it met the definition of obscene.
Yeah.
So it at least gives the chairperson the opportunity to be like, I feel that this has crossed a line, and if you want to take this to court, like, that person really has to be sure that they're ready to stand on, that's so obscene that I need you to stop talking. Because
Right.
there are legal ramifications. So,
And whoever's the chair should definitely take that training on public comments, because
Yeah.
they go into,
yeah, I've
What's
taken
acceptable?
it a couple times, and
The
it's
other thing
very clear that there's not a lot.
right. The other thing I do want to say is, it's not polite to come in and call us morons and tell us that we're making terrible decisions.
But
and
it's
that
legal.
We should all resign. But that's perfectly acceptable to do.
Yep,
So,
but we can't yell back at them.
no. So I know some board members have struggled with that in the past, nobody at this circle, but in general, you just have to
Take
be
the
okay
lumps
with the
with the
fact that people don't like you and they can express how they feel.
and you know what? I said to people all the time, even when I was in Albany, my husband doesn't agree with me maybe 75% of the time. That's okay, we're still friends. We're still together after 40 years.
Does anyone remember that time I kicked my own husband out of a board meeting? That was fun.
All right, so so nothing on 6.
Yeah, we'll leave it.
We'll leave it, and how about 7? Are there any more changes to these last 3 paragraphs?
No.
Okay.
So I'm making a motion to send BEDH to the full board with the changes to number 1 as we discussed.
Yep, no, those are the only ones. Okay,
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That was all 3 of us. All right, so we've run over, but I did bring, just so people know, the list that I have 2 lists. I have this multi-page packet of all of the ones that are out of date. It's all of them, basically. And then I got this from the School Boards Association, which tells me all of the policies that the School Board Association has available as sample policies, and when those were updated.
Yep.
And then we also have, from the School Board Association, I have a list of the legal changes
Yep.
and what policies we should be looking at because of legal changes. So when I sit down with Ms. Carey and Mr. Parker in the next 2 weeks, we will put all this stuff together and come up with the agenda for next month, dividing it between this and the legally required changes and the things that admin needs from us for the running of the schools.
And you can, that's my list. I love it. I love
Yes.
lists. So what it
I
is,
also love your
is
list.
we have, it's not just the old policies, but in order for us to then be in compliance with the law, how I did it was I picked like 7 or 8 old policies that were out of compliance, and then 2 policies that were in compliance if we address them at the 4-year mark.
Right, but
So in 2025, we're supposed to be up to date.
So-
But we're on the list for NHSBA to go through and do our updates themselves. It's just they can't get to it until
right,
Christmas.
and tell us what's out of date and what.
We won't necessarily need to do this because we've already paid for that service. We're just on the list of getting it done, but we still have a lot to follow, so we still have to be addressing these until they do.
Yep. The other thing to note, Ms. Bishop, while you're here, I'm a tangential thinker in a way that I don't think you are the same way that I am. So when I see one of these that also references another one, which references another one, which references another one, I pull all of those too. So I'm bouncing all over your list because we started with one, but it talks about this other one,
Yeah,
so
I
that we
didn't do
don't have any that aren't. I hate to find one that we updated and then the 3 that reference it aren't.
Yep.
So we've gotten a little off because I'm crazy about that stuff.
No, that was
done the
my
same thing
intention.
with
I
mine,
wasn't,
though,
I didn't read through all of them as I went through them.
Right, it's a Herculean task.
I did an Excel spreadsheet, and I left-clicked, and I said organized by date, and then I divided by 10.
So we're a little off, but we're still chugging away. And that's all I have. I just wanted to give everybody the update on where we go next. And I'll be back with some more information about BHC another time. All right, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay?
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we are adjourned at 7:45. Thank you guys for staying the extra 15 minutes.
No problem.